Hello, my name is Margaret Herman, and I was a camper in the 80s at Camp Magnolia. I was also a friend of Emily Braddock, one of the victims. This is difficult for me to talk about, but I want to. It's for me, for Emily, and for justice of all the victims, and to set the record straight about Griffin Kallen. As you know, he was responsible for murdering 5 people in 1987 in a satanic ritual. So I first began attending Camp Magnolia in 1985 when I was 9, and it was a great time. Canoeing and archery and scary stories around the fire. It was an excuse to be a kid, I just never thought one of those scary stories would come true. So anyway, it was 1986 when Griffin Kallen started working at Camp Magnolia, and he was assigned to the same troop that I was in, that being Troop 7. And he was really nice. He was so nice. He was funny. He joked with all of us. He was so laid back, and he never raised his voice at anyone, and he always had a smile. I don't remember any camper or counselor saying anything bad about him. He was like an older brother figure to everyone. And it was also at Camp Magnolia that I met my friend Emily Braddock in 1985. She was the same age as me and was in the same troop. I remember she was a bubbly, energetic girl that would laugh at everything and wanted to try everything. She loved Gem and the holograms, and I always remember her wearing a Gem wristwatch 24/7. I still have that watch. I think she wanted to be a park ranger when she grew up, or maybe a firefighter. I don't remember. She was a tomboy and an outdoor person. I was a girly girl. I wanted to be a ballerina. Anyway, she was my first friend at camp, and we did everything together. We were like sisters. We swam, we learned to canoe, we did the ropes course, pranked the boys. She even made me sign up for a reptile class where we handled all kinds of animals, like snakes and lizards and all kinds of slithery things. That girl had no fear, none. So it was summer of 1987, and it was my second week at camp during the 4th of July week. And me and Emily, we were enjoying our time as always, and everything was going great until that night. As I remember, there was going to be an overnight sleepout at Hamilton's Point, and Griffin Kallen and Sarah White, our counselors, were running the event. I remember there being, I think, maybe 20 spots available, and there were 17 of us. And Emily, ever the adventurer she was, immediately signed up without a second thought. I don't blame her. Sleeping under the stars and looking at the night sky and the shooting stars and constellations and listening to the crickets seemed like fun. Telling stories and roasting marshmallows and hot dogs around the campfire was the camp experience. And it was a beautiful week, too. Not a cloud in the sky, not super hot either. And if only I knew. And so, us wanting to stick together, I signed up too. Griffin Kallen and 3 other counselors were in charge. There was Sarah White, Lauren Mayer, and James Hale. We packed our sleeping bags and backpacks, and were off. I remember that night being relatively uneventful. We were all gathered around the fire at sunset, and we were all joking like kids. And then Griffin began telling us the story of Thomasin Miller, the supposed witch who cursed the land of Camp Magnolia. I was, and I'm still not a person who loves scary stories. I like comedies and Disney, musicals, and all that kind of happy stuff. No violence. I think I remember clinging to Emily when he was telling it. But again, at the time, it was just a story to scare us. I didn't believe it. Then I had to. From what I was told, everything happened at around 12 a.m., midnight. Griffin had dragged 4 campers and 1 counselor, including Emily, into the woods, where he bound and gagged them, arranged them in a pentagram pattern, then slit their throats and wrists in a satanic ritual. I was asleep. I didn't hear anything. The next morning, I woke up and I noticed Emily and the other 4 were missing, along with Griffin. I assumed maybe they were in the bathrooms or something. So the other 2 counselors, James and Lauren, led us back to camp for breakfast. I guess they assumed nothing was wrong either. I remember not eating because I kept wondering where Emily was, and I figured maybe she got hurt or sick or something. And remember, this was before cell phones, so it's not like we could text or anything. I was unfortunately right about her being hurt. It was around 10:30 a.m. when the camp director came into the mess hall and told us there's been a terrible accident, and all of us were ordered back to the cabins and were told to stay there until further notice. And I just got this gut-wrenching feeling that Emily and the others were involved. So we were all herded back to our cabins and stayed there for about an hour when a counselor told us to pack our things because we were being sent home. And since Emily hadn't come back, I just knew. At that point, I knew. So I packed my stuff, and there were a bunch of school buses and parents' cars arriving, and everyone was being stuffed in. I remember seeing tons of police cars and ambulances. There were officers asking questions, writing down things on their notepads, and the paramedics were carrying the bodies away. And I looked over at one group of paramedics, wheeling a body away on a stretcher. And it was bloody. It was covered by a white sheet, but hanging off the side was a small arm. And I saw the gem wristwatch, and I realized it was my friend. I think I cried the whole way home. I admit I suffer from guilt every day because I wish I could have helped her. I know I was only 12, but I don't know. I miss Emily a lot. The 4th of July will never be the same for me, I'll tell you that. During the years leading up to and after the trial, I cried myself to sleep. It took years of counseling to come to terms with Emily's death, and I was in such denial that I always expected Emily to call and want to hang out, and my parents would have to painfully remind me of the truth. Just one more play date, one more girls' night. I know I'm not the only one who feels that way. I couldn't attend the trial, but I remember watching the news coverage on TV. Every time I saw Emily's photo, I cried. Every time the anchor reminded me she was gone, it hurt a lot. Apparently, Griffin Kallen tried to plead insanity and claimed he was possessed or something like that. I don't know, it didn't work, obviously, because he was found guilty. I think I jumped for joy when I heard the verdict. And I wanted to give a victim impact statement, but I just couldn't. It was too painful for me. But at least he went to jail. Everyone got justice. Doesn't bring anyone back, though. Listen, I know there were and still are a ton of people who study this case and want to understand why Griffin Kallen committed the murders or are fascinated about the supernatural aspects, like Thomasin Miller and the curses. I know 2020 and Dateline did an episode on this case, and I was interviewed for them. But personally, I don't care about any of that. I don't believe in ghosts or curses or witches. I believe that Griffin Kallen was a chameleon. He pretended to be nice and friendly to lure people in, and then pounced when they weren't looking. The cops said they discovered various occult and horror novels and writings in his cabin, as well as a drawing of dead children in the same manner he killed them. So I honestly believe he planned it for a while. And then he spun a sob story about how he was possessed because he was inspired by the horror movies he talked about and the stories he told around the campfire. I don't buy this excuse, and I think he's guilty, and I'm glad he went to prison for life. He was looking for sympathy and a way to mitigate what he did. He knew exactly what he was doing, and I didn't buy it one bit, and I'm glad the jury didn't either. I ask myself every day, why? Why did he do it? Why did he kill all those people, including Emily? Why wasn't I picked? And why did I survive when it could have easily been me? I guess I'm lucky, but those 5 weren't. And that haunts me every day. As I mentioned, it took years of counseling to come to terms with what happened. I ended up getting married, and as corny as it sounds, I named my daughter Emily. She's the same Spitfire and adventurer like my friend, so I know her spirit lives. I told you I still have Emily's gem in the holograms watch, and I treasure that every day. It's a painful memory, but I'm glad I got to talk about it. All I can say is I'm so sorry to all the victims and their families and friends. I hope you find peace and closure, and I'm here mourning with you. And to Griffin Kallen, rot in hell.